Halloween is a holiday loved and celebrated by children and adults alike. With a mixture of the cute and the macabre, there is something for everyone to enjoy. It's the one night of the year where you can dress up and become whoever you want and embrace all things spooky and strange. Halloween has also seeped onto the big screen, influencing some of our favourite horror films. But where does this holiday and its traditions originate from? What is the true story behind Halloween? Hi guys, I hope you're doing really well. My name is Sarah and welcome to What the Horror, the channel where we talk about horror movies old and new. Also, welcome to a new episode of Truly Horror, the series where we talk about the true stories, the true legends and true crime surrounding certain horror movies. The behind the scenes stuff that is often stranger and scarier than the movies themselves. But that's right, it is time for another Truly Horror episode. But my little horror lovers, this is no ordinary Truly Horror. No. This episode is dedicated to exploring the true legends, lore and history behind the greatest holiday of the year, Halloween. Now, some of you may know nothing about the origins of this holiday. Some of you may know a few facts and some of you may already know it all. But whatever your knowledge, sit back, get comfy and let's talk all things spooky. Before we get into the episode though, if you are new here and love all things horror, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming content. Halloween has appeared in and inspired so many horror movies, some of them simply using the holiday's name, others setting their story on the holiday night itself or in horror haunt nights. There are even those that you may not be aware are set on or around Halloween, it not being the movie's main focus. But there are also those that fully embrace the holiday and make it the core of the film, taking on its lore and legends to influence and create their characters and stories. And perhaps two of the most famous of these films are Halloween and its sequels and the anthology Trick or Treat. And these are the films we are going to be focusing on for this episode, looking at the elements of Halloween that these films use and then looking at the truth and origins behind them. This will include looking at the pagan celebration of Samhain, human sacrifice, Stonehenge, costumes, trick-or-treating, jack-o'-lanterns and of course, respecting the dead. It's difficult to think of the holiday of Halloween without thinking of the franchise of the same name and its pale masked antagonist Michael Myers. Well, for us horror movie lovers at least. The films always take place on or leading up to Halloween night and are adorned with Halloween decorations, parties, carved pumpkins and trick-or-treaters. They are the perfect watch for the spooky season because of their Halloween aesthetic. But as the films went on, they no longer just set the story on Halloween night, but instead decided to take elements of the holiday's origins to inspire their story and also add to the lore of Michael Myers. I'm talking of course about Halloween 3, Season of the Witch and the Thorn cult trilogy consisting of Halloween 4, 5 and 6. In Halloween 3, the antagonist Colonel Cochran, the owner of the Silver Shamrock Company, at first appears to be nothing more than the owner of a company which has made 3 funky new Halloween masks that the children just can't get enough of. But it is revealed that he is actually a member of a Celtic group that still believes in offering a sacrifice for Samhain, the ancient Celtic celebration of the coming of winter. Cochran embedded a computer chip in each of the 3 mask designs, which would then be activated by a TV advert broadcast at 9 p.m, killing any child wearing one of the masks. His plan was to resurrect the ancient ritual of sacrificing children on Samhain, while the planets are aligned, harnessing power from a stone taken from Stonehenge. He explained to the movie's protagonist, Daniel Chalice, that the sacrifices were an offering to the pagan gods to make them happy, as a way to save the people and, quote, control our environment, end quote. Cochran also describes the celebration of Samhain as the start of the Celtic year, and a time when the barriers would be down between the real and the unreal, and the dead might be looking in to sit by their fires. In the Thorn trilogy of Halloween, we are introduced to the cult of Thorn, which is a cult of druids who have been around for thousands of years. The cult and its involvement with Michael Myers are hinted at in Halloween 4 and 5, but it isn't until Halloween 6 that we really delve into it. There are, of course, 2 versions or cuts of the film, but according to the film in both versions, the cult takes its name after the thorn symbol found in runes, a form of ancient alphabet, symbols carved out of stone or wood and used in pagan rituals to invoke magic. As Tommy Doyle explains, Thorn represented a demon who spread sickness, destroyed crops, and brought death to hundreds. Within the film, according to Celtic legend, each tribe would choose and offer up one child to be inflicted with the curse of Thorn. They would be marked with the thorn symbol and would then offer up blood sacrifices by killing their next of kin on the night of Samhain, their belief being the sacrifice of one family meant sparing the lives of an entire tribe. Michael Myers had been chosen by the inhabitants of Haddonfield, those who were members of the cult, to be inflicted with the curse. This is the driving force behind Michael's attacks. The curse also appears to give the subject inhuman strength and immortality, explaining why no one ever seems to be able to successfully kill Michael. The thorn symbol is also a constellation that appears from time to time on Halloween night, and this goes towards explaining why Michael only attacks on certain Halloween nights and not on every single one. The truth behind the holiday of Halloween lies in the ancient pagan festival of Samhain, not Samhain as it's written. To the ancient Celts, it was the most significant of the festivals taking place between autumn and the beginning of winter, marking the beginning of the dark half of the year. The word itself, Samhain, is Gaelic and means summer's end. Its origins date back around 2,000 years ago and was celebrated in England, Ireland and Northern Europe by the Celts. It took place over 3 days and 3 nights and, according to some ancient texts, was considered to be a mandatory event and a time where farming and fighting would come to an end so that people could instead gather together and prepare for and survive the winter. Fires lit in families' homes were allowed to burn out while they were out gathering and harvesting the crops. Through the night, bonfires would be lit to ward off evil, and then people would take a flame from the bonfire back home to relight their home fires. Cattle and other livestock would also be slaughtered, preserved and stored for winter. But Samhain is also a time that is associated with sacrifice, both animal and human. Apparently, fearing for the success and survival of the next year's crops, the Celts would provide a blood offering in the form of a human sacrifice to please the pagan gods. Often this sacrifice would be someone of importance, and it may have even been considered an honour to be the one chosen. The festival of Samhain evolved when Pope Gregory IV of the Catholic Church moved the Christian celebration of All Saints' Day to coincide with the pagan celebration. All Saints' Day dates all the way back to the 4th century and was held on various dates depending on the country, but was originally celebrated in springtime. The holiday was to celebrate and commemorate all Christian martyrs, but in the 9th century the church wanted to remove pagan celebrations, and in an attempt to remove the pagan elements of Samhain, Pope Gregory moved All Saints' Day to the same day. The celebration would take place over 3 days, consisting of All Saints' Eve, All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, the 3rd day being to commemorate all the dead and not just Christian martyrs. The 3 days were collectively known as All Hallowtide, with All Saints' Eve becoming All Hallows' Eve and eventually Halloween. Another Celtic belief was that on the night of Samhain, the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest, and the dead, along with other creatures such as fairies and monsters, could walk the earth among us. A form of this belief can be seen in The Crow, when Eric Draven is brought back from the dead for All Hallows' Eve to avenge his and his fiance's death. On All Saints' Day, prayers were said for the dead, and then on All Souls' Day, church bells would be rung and candles would be lit to guide lost souls to heaven. There is a lot of emphasis on showing respect for the dead during these celebrations. Stonehenge is an important and spiritual place for the pagan beliefs. And the funny thing is, no one really knows where it came from or who made it. There are, of course, plenty of theories and legends, including one of my favourites, that Merlin the Wizard actually built it in Ireland and then magically transported it to England. Every year there are still thousands of people who come to visit Stonehenge for the winter solstice, but from my research there is no link to Stonehenge with Samhain. As far as the cult of Thorn, well, there just isn't one historically. There is a symbol named Thorn, or Thurisaz, but for my research it seems to be rooted in Norse mythology, referenced in Icelandic and Norwegian texts, rather than Celtic and pagan. There are slight variants as to its meaning and, quote, powers, but a common thread is that of strength, violence, power, and giants. The rune is often linked to the Norse god Thor, who had strength and used violence and the power of his hammer, Mjolnir, to battle giants and protect the human race. In divination, the Thurisaz symbol is a sign of conflict or hardship. So, no cult, no curse, and no familial sacrifice. One film that comes the closest to delving into the origins and legends of Halloween is the horror anthology Trick or Treat. In it, we follow 4 stories all set in the same town on the same Halloween night. The film is a love letter to Halloween and includes characters who love the holiday just as much as we do. In the principal, we meet Stephen Wilkins, who was brought up by his father to respect the holiday and the dead, because, quote, Halloween is the one night when the dead and all sorts of other things roam free and pay us a visit, end quote. Wilkins is so passionate about the holiday that he will kill any child who shows disrespect to Halloween by poisoning the sweets he hands out. We also see Wilkins lament the fact that people these days don't care about the traditions which were originally started to protect us. It's a good job you guys have this episode to brush up on your Halloween facts then, isn't it? We also meet Halloween lover Rhonda, who tells the audience the abbreviated version of what we covered on Samhain, and 4 ladies who want to find the perfect costume and date for their party later that night, only for the audience to discover that these ladies aren't all they appear to be, and were actually hiding behind more than one costume. And finally, we meet Mr. Krieg, a Scrooge-esque man who hates Halloween and who turns trick-or-treaters away without a treat. But the main character tying all of these stories together is Sam, the cute little trick-or-treater who turns out to be the demonic spirit of Halloween, who punishes those who break Sam's rules of Halloween, which are the following. Number 1, always give candy to trick-or-treaters. Number 2, always wear a costume. Number 3, never extinguish the flame in a jack-o'-lantern before midnight. And number 4, respect the dead. During the film, we see Sam kill a woman who takes off her costume, takes down her decorations, and extinguishes her jack-o'-lantern before midnight, punish some kids who disrespect the dead by using them to play a prank on Rhonda, and attack Mr. Krieg for not giving trick-or-treaters candy. Despite Sam being there to make sure the rules of Halloween are being followed, he is willing to show mercy to those that learn and change their ways. In the final story titled Sam, when Sam is attacking Mr. Krieg, a chocolate bar falls on Mr. Krieg's chest, or he uses it to block an attack. But either way, Sam sees this as an offer of candy to a trick-or-treater and spares his life. Sam, whose name is actually inspired by the name Samhain, spelt Samhain, is there to observe and make sure the rules of Halloween are being respected and followed. But what are the origins of these Halloween practices that he's so protective of? Like a lot of parts of Halloween, trick-or-treating has evolved over the centuries, but its origins can be dated back 2,000 years ago to the time of the pagan celebration of Samhain. We've already talked about how the Celts believed that the veil between the living and the dead was at its thinnest on Samhain, but what we didn't talk about was how people would wear masks and costumes, usually made from animal skin and fur, to disguise and protect themselves from wandering creatures and dead souls. The idea being that the spirits might mistake them for one of their own and just leave them alone, leave them in peace. They would also leave out food to appease the creatures to prevent them from capturing their children or other acts of cruelty. There are also apparently accounts of people during Samhain wearing costumes and going house to house begging for wood for the communal bonfire. Another origin dates back to when the church moved All Saints' Day to coincide with the pagan holiday. During All Hallowtide in England, Ireland and Scotland, People, usually the children of a poor family, would go round the houses of the wealthy to receive soul cakes in return for a song or a prayer for the dead relatives of said household. This tradition became known as souling. There is another tradition that doesn't actually take place on Halloween, but some historians believe could have influenced or even merged with the modern version of trick-or-treating. And that is the tradition of a penny for the guy. Now in the UK, we celebrate Bonfire Night or Guy Fawkes Night on the 5th of November to mark the failure of the Gunpowder Plot, a plan to destroy the Houses of Parliament and remove the Protestant King James I, and the following execution of Guy Fawkes in 1606. Up until as recent as the 1960s, children would wear masks and carry around effigies of Guy Fawkes, begging for pennies. The most recent and most recognisable version of trick-or-treating came about in the 1930s in America. During the 1920s, there had been a rise in violent pranks taking place on Halloween. And we're not just talking toilet papering a tree. We're talking vandalism, arson, and physical attacks. It's believed that to prevent these acts of violence, communities came up with the idea of a house-to-house party, where children would literally go house to house playing games and getting sweets. World War II would put a brief halt on Halloween celebrations, but by the end of the 1940s, they were back in full swing. As far as costumes go, they have always been present during Halloween celebrations. Back in the 1920s and 30s, people would host masquerades for both adults and children. Some believed that costumes were part of the issue of the violent tricks during the 1930s and 40s, as they allowed the wearer to remain anonymous. During the 1950s, with pop culture being more accessible through TV, costumes began to be modelled after superheroes and comic book characters, and by the 1960s, adults were once again dressing up for Halloween, but this time ditching the masks and instead just opting for a costume. And of course, during the 1970s and 80s, there was a rise in costumes inspired by horror movies such as Halloween and A Nightmare on Elm Street. The origin of the jack-o'-lantern comes from an Irish myth known as Stingy Jack. The legend goes Stingy Jack invited the devil for a drink, but not wanting to pay for the drinks, Jack convinced the devil to turn into a coin so that Jack could use it to pay for the drinks. But Jack didn't use the coin. Instead, he put it in his pocket next to a cross, trapping the devil as a coin. Jack eventually freed the devil, but only after they came to an agreement that the devil would leave Jack alone for 1 year. 1 year later, when the devil returned, Jack tricked him again. He tricked him this time into climbing into a tree to pick fruit, and when the devil did so, Jack drew a cross on the tree, trapping the devil once more. This time, Jack freed the devil after he agreed to leave Jack alone for 10 years. But not long after this, Jack died and was turned away by heaven for his cruel acts, and the devil, upset from the tricks Jack played on him, turned him away from hell, dooming him to walk the earth forever. The devil did gift Jack a burning lump of coal to light his way, which Jack placed in a hollowed out turnip. Back then, you see, we didn't have pumpkins in the UK, so we would carve turnips instead. But once people emigrated to America and brought the jack-o'-lantern tradition with them, they soon changed it to pumpkins when they realised how much easier it is to carve them. Plus, I mean, they look freaking awesome. Et voila. So there you have some of the true stories and legends behind the holiday of Halloween and the traditions we follow on it. I hope this was interesting for you and maybe you even learned something you didn't previously know. Let me know down in the comments your favourite facts, but also let me know any that you know of that I missed. I always love learning new things. It's a sad day here at What the Horror, I'm afraid. I have not forgotten to put my bat light on. The truth is, the bat light is no more. The bat light is pining for the fjords, has shuffled off this mortal coil.
It's passed on. This parrot is no more. It has ceased to be.
I genuinely feel a bit sad about this. I've had this bat light from the very beginning of What the Horror. It feels like part of the channel's identity and I feel a little bit lost without it. I'm genuinely gutted that it's broken. And yet, life moves on. Halloween is almost upon us now and I hope you all have a wonderful, safe and spooky time. If you liked this episode, then please give it a like as it helps the channel and pleases the YouTube overlords. And if you're not already, then hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any further spooky season content. But in the meantime, thank you as always for stopping by. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye.